Hey, Mike Matthews here from Muscle for Life and Legion Athletics, and welcome to another video podcast. This time around, I'm going to do a Q&A. So I'm going to be answering questions that people have asked me, mostly via email, social media, and YouTube comments. And the idea here is simple. I have 4 questions that I've chosen, and I will do my best to give quick and helpful answers to each of them. And I plan on doing one of these Q&As every month or so. So if you would like me to answer your question in the next one, simply email me at mike@muscleforlife.com or leave a comment in one of my videos or DM me on Instagram or tweet at me or Facebook message me. Reach out to me, ask your question, and chances are I will get back to you. If it's email, almost certainly, because I have the best system for staying on top of my email. And I would say if it's a social media message, almost certainly. If it is a comment on a YouTube video, probably not, because those are the most neglected out of everything. Okay, so let's get to the first question, which is from a reader of my book, Bigger, Leaner, Stronger, who is following the advice in the book and working in the 4 to 6 rep range, or with about 80 to 85% of his 1 rep max on most of his lifts, but is asking if it's okay to work in a higher rep range on some of his accessory stuff, because he finds that working with heavier weights on those exercises makes it tough to maintain good form. And the answer is absolutely. You absolutely can work in a higher rep range on any exercise, really, but I do recommend that you focus on the 4 to 6 rep range for your compound lifts. And if you are relatively new to proper weightlifting, and that's really who I wrote Bigger, Leaner, Stronger for. I didn't write that for intermediate or advanced weightlifters. It's really for people who are new to proper weightlifting. I recommend that you work exclusively in the 4 to 6 rep range on your compound lifts, at least for the first year to year and a half. Now, as far as your accessory exercises go, you can also work in the 4 to 6 rep range on those exercises. However, you might find that certain ones, like shoulder raises, for example, are quite difficult in that rep range, especially if you are a new weightlifter. What you'll find is what the person who wrote me found: your form breaks down. And in that case, yes, you can absolutely move up to, I would say, the 6 to 8 rep range is my standard recommendation. And I actually addressed this point specifically in the new 3rd edition of Bigger, Leaner, Stronger, which is coming out soon. It's going to be Q1 of 2019. Digitals, ebooks, and audiobook, or the ebook and audiobook is going to be first, followed by the hard copies. So I would recommend bumping up to the 6 to 8 rep range in the case of accessory exercises that do not lend themselves well to the 4 to 6 rep range. That said, if you have no issue with the 4 to 6 rep range on your accessory exercises, there's nothing wrong with doing that and not periodizing, not working in other rep ranges into your training routine. Periodization does have a place in weightlifting routines, but it is more suited to intermediate and advanced weightlifters. It is really not necessary for beginners. And just a quick note, if you are going to be periodizing, if you are going to be working in higher rep ranges on some accessory exercises, make sure that you still work to progressively overload on those exercises, that you still use the same progression model, the double progression model that I share in the book. All the rules are the same. It's just you are working in a different rep range. That's all. Okay, so the next question is if I have any snack recommendations for cutting. And my first piece of advice here is to minimize snacking when you are cutting, because it is the easiest way to accidentally overeat. And this is especially true when the snacking isn't controlled, meaning these aren't planned meals. You are not weighing or measuring the amount of food that you're eating. You're kind of just eating things in your environment here and there in between your larger meals. And the problem here is it doesn't take all that much snacking or all that much mindless eating, so to speak, to more or less erase your calorie deficit for the day if those calories aren't accounted for in your meal plan or aren't being tracked via an app, or however you are ensuring that your calorie intake is lower than your calorie output. And so the smart way to snack while cutting, really I'd say in general, but specifically while cutting, is to plan those snacks as meals. So what I do, for example, when I'm cutting is I wake up early. I wake up at about 5:30 or 6 o'clock, and then I go in my infrared sauna and I read for a bit. And then before I train, I will usually have some caffeine. So I'll have some of my pre-workout Pulse, as well as my pre-workout Fat Burner Forge, which has yohimbine and HMB and CDP choline. And I used to also have a serving of my Fat Burner Phoenix, which has synephrine and other natural ingredients that increase your metabolic rate and your fat burning. However, the green tea extract in it started to make me nauseous. I used to be not sensitive to it, and for some reason, now I am. So I save that for when I have food. So I'm doing my training fasted, right? That's why I have the yohimbine. If I were not fasted, it wouldn't work. I go and I lift. So I'm at the gym, let's say 7:15, 7:30. I do my workout. I go to the office. I'm there by 8:45, give or take 10 minutes or so. And then I have my first meal, which is a protein shake. And these days, it would be either 2 scoops of whey. I just take my own Whey Plus. It's just 100% whey isolate. Or a scoop of whey with a scoop of casein. And in this case, it would be my own casein plus. You can't go wrong either way, of course. I just kind of like the combination of whey and casein. I like how it tastes. I like how it feels in my mouth. But you could just do pure whey, or you could do a vegan protein. You can do whatever you want, really. The point is, I just like to have about 40 to 50 grams of protein for my breakfast. Then comes snack time at about 11 o'clock. That's my first snack. And again, this is on my meal plan, and it's simply an apple. And the reason why is I like apples. They're delicious. They also have a fair amount of prebiotic fiber, and they are very filling, especially for the calories. And then my lunch is about 12:30, which is simply a salad with chicken. And usually the salad is pretty plain because I don't mind it and I don't feel like putting in a lot of time making fancy salads. But it's going to have some spinach. It's going to have some red lettuce, some green lettuce, some romaine lettuce, some avocado to get some monounsaturated fat in. And I usually use a bit of a light balsamic, like a Newman's light balsamic, with then just some balsamic vinegar on top of it to give it a bit more flavor, but keep the calories low. And the reason why I'm keeping the calories low, the reason why I don't eat very much for breakfast, and as you can see, I don't eat very much for lunch, and especially when I'm cutting, and why my snack is just an apple, is I prefer to eat more calories later. I prefer to eat more calories at dinner, or eat a large dinner, because I like how my body, I like when I'm at work all day, and if I eat smaller meals, I find that I have smoother, steadier energy levels, and I don't really ever get that kind of weighed down feeling that you get when you eat a lot of calories. These days, however, I am leaving the office a bit later and therefore eating a bit later, and therefore am not working after dinner. So I prefer to have that larger meal at dinner when I don't care if I feel a bit sluggish afterward. Anyway, back to my meal plan. So lunch is 12:30 or so, and then my second snack of the day is around 3 or 3:30, and it's usually something that is more or less just protein. So it could be a scoop of protein powder. That would be my third scoop of protein powder for the day, or a high protein, lower calorie, lower fat, lower carb yogurt like Skyr. That's my yogurt of choice these days. I like it more than Greek yogurt. It is Icelandic yogurt. And I believe the company that I like the most right now that I've tried, I don't like Siggy's so much. I believe it's Icelandic Provisions, and I just like their plain yogurt, which is also very good mixed with some protein powder, by the way. And that will usually hold me over until dinner, which is somewhere around 7:30. And then if I'm going to eat any more after that, it will be some slow burning protein before bed, like a scoop of casein or some more yogurt or low-fat cottage cheese. That's another good snack that I like. You put some salt and pepper into it, and if you want to put some fruit into it as well, it's a high protein, low calorie, filling snack. And so, as you can tell, my preference for snacks while cutting, and really just in general, is foods that are higher protein and lower calorie because one, they help me hit my daily protein target, and two, they help keep me full and they don't cause wild fluctuations in blood sugar levels, which can mess with your energy levels and can make you feel tired and kind of give you that, post sugar or post carb crash that many people experience. I also like fruit and apples in particular for snacks because most fruit is lower on the glycemic index, which has nothing to do with weight loss or really doesn't have anything to do with health. But many people will find that if they stick to mostly lower GI foods, their energy levels are more stable. They do feel more alert. They don't have as big of an afternoon dip as people who load up on carbs and especially high GI carbs around lunchtime. A lot of people that do that, and I know this just firsthand from working with so many people, within an hour or so, they're struggling to stay awake. Another good snack when you are cutting, if your meal plan allows for it, if your macros allow for it, is nuts. Nuts are filling. They provide monounsaturated fat, which is a very healthy form of fat, and in some cases, a bit of protein as well. So the types of snacks that I would stay away from are any sort of caloric beverages. Those are the worst while you're cutting. It is way too easy to drink way too many calories and not feel full at all from it, or feel maybe a little bit full for a little bit. Whereas food is always going to be much more filling simply because volume, the amount of space that is occupied in your stomach, directly impacts the feeling of fullness. I would also recommend that you do not snack on just high GI carbs, stuff like pretzels, chips, white bread, candy, stuff like that, because if you're like most people, what you'll find is that while those foods can contain quite a few calories, they are not going to keep you full for very long, which is going to leave you hungry early. And you're going to have to just suffer through that to wait till the next meal or eat off plan, which can often lead to overeating. Okay, so that's it for that question. Let's move on to the next one. Do you have to train abs on a cut? And the answer is no. You don't necessarily have to train abs at all to have a great core. And to know whether you need to or not, you first need to get lean and see what you're working with, so to speak. So for guys, I would say get to about 10% body fat and see how your core looks. And for women, I would say get to about 20% and see how your core looks. There is a chance that if you are doing a lot of heavy compound weightlifting, like I and many others recommend, that your core is going to be highly developed and you really don't need to do any additional training whatsoever. That said, you may also find that once you get down to that body fat percentage, your core muscles just look underdeveloped to you. And the rectus abdominis muscles in particular, the bulky ab muscles on the front that make up the six pack. And having worked with thousands of people over the years, I would say that that's more common than the previous scenario. It's more common that people, both men and women, get down to that lower body fat percentage and find that for the look that they want, they need to develop their core muscles a bit more and their rectus abdominis muscles in particular. And that's really why I recommend that everyone just starts training their core right from the beginning. It doesn't take much time to do, 6 or 9 sets of core exercises per week, which is all you need to do in addition to your compound weightlifting. And if you're like most people, you are probably going to need to do it to get the core that you really want. So might as well just start right away. And if you're one of the minority, if you're one of the few people who doesn't need to, who all you would really need to do is just get lean and you'd have the exact core that you want, doing some core training isn't going to ruin that. In fact, it will probably just make your core look that much better. So to summarize, no, you do not have to train your abs or train your core when you're cutting, and it's probably not going to do all that much if you're cutting for a shorter period of time anyway. So let's say you're doing a 10 or 12 week cut. Whether you train abs or not during that period probably isn't going to influence the outcome all that much. However, if you are training your core for a longer period of time, like if we're talking 6 months or even 12 months of core training, yeah, you can make a pretty significant visual change in your core in that period of time. And so really what you want to be thinking with your core is to focus on it and train it regularly until you are happy with the look that you have at 10% if you're a guy or 20% if you're a girl. And from there, you can continue training your core or not. So these days, I don't do any core exercises. I'm not doing any core exercises right now. I'm taking that time to train my calves, which is probably a lost cause, but I refuse to give up on it. They're growing millimeter by millimeter. I have the most stubborn calves ever. It's actually impressive. But I'm taking that time to train my calves instead of my core because I am happy with my overall core development. And because I do a lot of heavy compound weightlifting, I don't lose anything if I don't directly train my core with cable crunches or leg raises or the various exercises that you'll find in my books for men and women. Okay, so let's go to the final question for today's Q&A, and here it is. He says, my right quad is larger than my left, even though I almost never do single leg exercises. What am I doing wrong? How can I fix this issue? Now, if muscle imbalances is something you really want to dive into, if you are dealing with some imbalances yourself, or if you want to just know how to best prevent them, you can find a podcast that I recorded on that specifically. I don't think it was a video podcast. I think it was just like a long form monologue podcast, but you can find it here on my YouTube channel or in my podcast feed. And I also have an article on it over at muscleforlife.com. So if you go there and search for muscle imbalance, you will find the article. I believe the podcast video is embedded in the article as well. But the long story short here is just because you have a muscle imbalance does not mean that you are doing anything wrong. In fact, it is very common and almost guaranteed that you are going to develop at least one muscle imbalance in a major muscle group over time. And the reason for that is it does not take much in terms of favoring one side of your body over the other, on barbell exercises in particular, to develop a slight imbalance over time. And chances are that this is going to happen even if you try to remain conscious of using both sides of your body equally. For example, I noticed that in my squatting, when it came down to my last few reps, the hard ones, when I was really just trying to focus on giving everything I've got to keep the bar moving, I would tend to favor my right side a little bit over my left side. Over time, this has made my right quad a little bit more developed than my left quad. It's noticeable when I'm flexing. And so to address it, I first have really started to pay attention to make sure that I am pressing through the left side of my body as much as the right side. And I actually at first had to even overcompensate, or what felt like overcompensate, to get things more or less equal. But now it feels pretty balanced, and I'm more aware of when I'm starting to favor my right side, and I can quickly correct it. And I have also just increased the weekly volume on my left side, but not my right side, using the split squat. Good exercise, simple exercise, so I'll just do a few sets of split squats for my left leg that I do not do for my right. So my left leg is getting a bit more training every week than my right, which in time will help balance out the development. And that, of course, is the easiest way to address a muscle imbalance. First, make sure that your form is good on the exercises that you're doing, on the bilateral exercises that you're doing. So let's say it's an arm imbalance, a biceps imbalance. If you're doing a lot of straight bar bicep curls, that's fine. But you're going to have to make sure that you are not favoring your bigger or stronger side on that exercise. And another tip is simply increasing the volume on the lagging side. And you can do that using a unilateral exercise, a dumbbell exercise. In the case of the biceps, of course, just be doing some extra biceps curls for your lagging side. And I should also mention that unilateral exercises where your limbs move independently are good for not only fixing muscle imbalances, but also preventing them, because one side of your body cannot take over and make up for the other side, like what can happen with a barbell exercise. And so including unilateral exercises, dumbbell exercises really, in your weightlifting routines is generally a good idea for this reason and for others. Okay, well, that's it for this video podcast. I hope you found it helpful, and if you did, please do give it a like and drop a comment down below letting me know what you thought, and feel free to share any of your thoughts really on anything that we've discussed. Any tips you'd like to tell me about and everybody else, just drop them down in the comments below. And also, if you really like me and you like my stuff, please do click the red subscribe button over there. It's free, of course. And then if you click the bell, YouTube will notify you when the next video goes live. And last but not least, if you'd like to participate in the next Q&A, if you'd like me to answer one of your questions, just get it to me. The best way is going to be email, mike@muscleforlife.com. That way I can also give you an answer, which you will get. I won't say, oh, you got to wait. You'll get an answer, but I'll make a note of it for the next Q&A. Okay, well, that's it for now. And as it is December 31st right now, I'm going to say Happy New Year and see you next year.